here. Switch it up. There we go. Perfecto. All right. So I just wanted to come on and do a little bit of education around holistic medicine, what it is, what it isn't, all of those things, just simply because there's so many misnomers. So we'll talk about what holistic health actually is, what it means, and how your mind, your body, your emotions, even in your environment is all connected. And why most people get frustrated with quick fix medicine and how to start your healing journey without being overwhelmed. I am your host, Dr. Erica Steele. Let me put this in here just to keep myself focused. There we go. Awesome. And so, yeah, so let's kind of just start off with what holistic medicine actually is. And so, because a lot of times people really get confused about what holistic medicine is, they think that holistic medicine is really about taking supplements or doing one specific practice. Whether it is, hey, Daphne, whether it is like going to a yoga class, as I say all the time, going to yoga, taking supplements, eating whatever. And so a lot of times people will think that holistic medicine is just kind of one of those things. And we tend to put, hey, Rebel, we tend to put that label of holistic medicine on pretty much everything, especially in this day and age. And so I wanted to make some distinctions too in terms of different providers and what different providers do. Hey, Tata Kisses. And so, like, for instance, you have a functional medicine provider. So I'm a functional medicine provider. And instead of focusing on kind of symptoms, it's more of a structured approach. What do I mean by structured approach? Meaning it's looking at the body from a perspective of systems and working to address those particular systems. Thank you for the shares. And so that is, heavy on the laboratory testing. And a lot of times functional medicine providers will negate the spiritual components of it, the emotional components of it. A lot of times it's really just focused around doing testing and doing supplementation. And so what happens is that those particular patients or those practitioners really are only getting part of the healing that they need. And it can be very repetitive, but also just really supplement heavy. I've seen so many conventional providers try to come into the functional medicine space, and literally all they're doing is running tests and giving patients a whole bunch of supplements, not really being mindful of actual transformation. And so holistic medicine really deals with the transformation component. It's not just about taking supplements or changing your diet or any of those things, but it's actually transforming people's lives from wherever they find a holistic provider into, whatever it is that they want to create. Integrative medicine providers, I'm trained in that as well. So integrative medicine, what we do in that field is we work alongside conventional medicine and work alongside conventional doctors. And so, maybe an oncology patient, for instance, is seeking, care, and they are working with their conventional provider. They may also work with a provider such as myself, really to stabilize the health of the body, because conventional doctors are only trained to look for and identify and diagnose a disease. So if you don't have a disease, a lot of times it's like, oh, everything's fine, even when you have symptoms. That's why you may go to the doctor and your lab testing, everything looks normal, but you still have symptoms and you're still not feeling well. And so integrative medicine, we are trained to understand what conventional medicine uses, how they utilize, what they utilize, etc. However, that is not, that's not a bulk of what they do in terms of just focusing on the conventional side. You still are incorporating a lot of the natural things. So naturopathy is another form of natural medicine. And so it's based off of, 5 basic principles, like first do no harm, and doctor is teacher, and prevention's the best medicine. A lot of similarities to holistic medicine, but again, really missing more of that mental, emotional, psychosocial, spiritual side. Now, that doesn't mean that all naturopaths don't do any of that work. There are some naturopaths who do spend a lot more time in different aspects. But what I found is the lack of standardization in naturopathy, just by and large, and people not really being on the same page when it comes to treatment and it comes to care. You may have one practitioner that does like iridology, and one practitioner that maybe focuses on Ayurveda, or another practitioner that does live blood analysis or something like that. And so while these modalities are really good, it's not putting it all together. And again, you're leaving off the mental, emotional, psychosocial, spiritual side of healing, which is like literally 85% of it, in my humble opinion. So then you have, so we did functional medicine, integrative medicine, naturopathy. Let's see, you have an acupuncturist, which acupuncturists are trained in Eastern medicine, Eastern theory. In holistic medicine, we do use a lot of Western theory, but incorporate a lot of Eastern practices. And so acupuncturists looked at the meridian system, which is imbalance of qi, blockages of qi, and their intention is to remove those blockages of qi, whether those blockages come from immune system issues or toxicity or emotions or things like that. And so they are trained to clear those using either acupuncture or acupressure, something of that, or TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine, and Chinese herbs, to be able to move different qi and different movement. Again, very different from our Western medical approach, and more low frequency and more subtle energy. So it's going to take time if you use that modality to be able to build the system up. And so just managing expectations in the Western culture, because everybody's like, gotta get it now, gotta heal now. And it really, healing is not a rapid experience. So I think I've covered most of them. You do have chiropractors as well, which chiropractic care in and of itself is really just about removing impingements around, removing impingements around your subluxations around your spine, and then removing those through chiropractic adjustments and allowing that nervous system to now flourish. So I have a question that came in. I eat healthy and still have acid reflux. What can I do? Well, the first thing you need to do is check your pH levels. So I always like to say, like, we don't guess, we test. And that's also in functional medicine, we say that a lot too. And so, when people say, oh, I eat healthy, right? What people assume is healthy and what actually is healthy for them a lot of times are two different things. So if you're having symptoms of acid reflux, clearly what you're eating is not actually healthy for you. I hate to tell you. And so because you're driving more acidity. So not enough stomach acid is typically the cause of acid reflux or GERD, those types of symptoms. So what you, sorry, my phone. So what you are going to do in those cases is you got to check your salivary pH levels. We're looking at a 6.5 on the low end. Really 6.8 is the sweet spot, 6.8 to 7.2 pH levels. Now, a lot of times people will start with a really low acidity in their mouth. So the mouth needs to be more on the alkaline state so that your stomach acid can actually flourish. So kind of has this balancing. So we start with the mouth, making sure you're getting a lot more greenery because you're building, right? And then once you kind of assess that and make sure that that is where it needs to be, that 6.8 to 7.2, then you're going to go into the stomach acid itself. Pretty much how you do that is you take HCl until you get kind of this either burning feeling or you get kind of this heavy feeling, and that lets you know if you need additional HCl to be able to break down specifically your proteins, because you may not be breaking your proteins down. So we also look at things like communication when it comes to acid reflux and being able to speak your truth, especially because of the location that it is. And we also look at grief as well, and holding on to grief and storing grief in that chest area. So hopefully that helps in terms of your acid reflux symptoms. So feel free to ask any questions as we're going along. I'm not going to be on for too long. I just wanted to pop on, try to be more consistent with these lives. as best I can. Okay, so we kind of covered most of the natural healthcare providers and what they do. So here is what makes holistic medicine so unique and so different. So what holistic medicine is, number one, you have to have an ancestral connection to this work. It's not something that you can just go and do, because it's a being and an embodiment. And what do I mean by a being and an embodiment? Meaning there's a lineage and a heritage and an experience that one must have gone through, right, to gain, right? This is one of those, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger sort of things, because all of that really is lessons and blessings. This is very much a calling. This is not something that you do, or you go to school for, although people do, of course, go to school for it, but this isn't necessarily oh, now I'm going to go choose, this or that, right? And the reason for that is simply because there is so much that comes up, and you are really balancing a lot when it comes to a human being. So when we look at a human being from a holistic medicine perspective, naturally we are going to look at the physical symptoms of the patient. We also look at the environment in terms of like the if there's any toxicity in the environment, but also to like, how is a person's home, how is a person's relationships, their work-life balance, like their actual environment, because your environment is also going to impact you as well, in your environment. So we look at that. We look at the mental health of the patient. So there's several different aspects of mental health that we look at. Then we look at emotional health. We separate out the two, and we're looking at unprocessed wounds, unprocessed trauma, because those can store themselves in your physical body. Once we really start to teach a patient how to be more embodied with their emotions, now all of a sudden their bodies start to come out of that hypervigilant state and go more into a rest and digest state. Because if people are holding on, right, to their emotions and not able to let them go for whatever reason, that can impede on the body's ability to heal itself. So we don't want to do that. So as we begin to, free people up of that, then what tends to happen from there is they become more spiritually connected, more spiritually in tune to their higher self. So the ability to be able to know, yeah, exactly, the endocrine system, the ability to actually be aware of what they need and be able to seek that out. So we're really developing and building autonomy with our patients in holistic medicine. It's not a matter of, making them dependent upon you. I find that like in the functional medicine structures or the chiropractic structures or even in the naturopathic structures, they tend to create a lot of dependency on the provider. And that's because, again, you're not ushering patients into their own transformation and their own recovery. You're just kind of keeping them in a certain state. So we and every provider has their role, but we look at that aspect, and then that begins to open up a person really to their ancestors. That's why I said you have to have a connection to this work in order to practice it as a provider. Now, you can be a patient, of course, right? But to actually be an effective provider, my recommendation would be to have some sort of connection spiritually to the work. Otherwise, you're going to make a mess of it. You're going to be operating out of your ego. You're going to be operating out of your thought process. You're going to be operating about what you think you know and not necessarily following the energy, because sometimes, in an appointment, right, it's very, there's a lot of movement back and forth. There's a lot of movement of energy. I'm saying something, the patient's saying something, but also too, there's a lot in the background that's not being said, that you have to be intuitive enough to be able to connect with that. So if you don't have that intuition to begin with, or you're not connected to that intuition, then naturally, it's going to affect you and also ultimately your patient. What I love about holistic medicine is such a mirror back to you, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. And what I mean by a mirror is that anything that you have not processed, you have not looked at, you have not addressed is going to show up, in in real time with your patients. And so it gives you an opportunity to transform that aspect of yourself and really be that leader in holistic health and holistic healing that that patient so needs. So many people want to devoid themselves of responsibility and accountability. A lot of times I kind of attribute it to like a lack of mothering, almost like if they haven't had enough compassion, or they haven't had enough nurturance, or they haven't learned any self-soothing techniques, then what tends to happen is they reach out to any sort of provider that can serve that role to them. And sometimes their behaviors don't have anything to do with what's actually going on. It's just they've reverted back to those unhealed wounds of trauma in the subconscious mind, 0 to 8 years old. So it's a very intimate relationship that happens, and it's a very triggering relationship. So you've got to have kind of that constitution, if you will, using a homeopathic term. That's one doctor we didn't talk about, homeopaths. And so, we have to have a strong constitution within yourself to be able to kind of manage all of that, because you have to hold patients accountable. You've got to communicate, what they need, what they don't need, and understanding how to communicate that in a way that is going to be received. And that sometimes can be challenging, especially if patients are more in the habit of repressing, avoiding, denying how they actually feel. Sometimes you're kind of tiptoeing around people until they are willing to look at themselves. So there's a lot of dynamics going on, and we look at the relationship that one organ system has to another. So we're looking at the relationship, let's say the digestive system has the nervous system, or the nervous system has to the immune system, or the immune system has to the hormonal system. So as we're looking at all of these different systems and how these different systems work together as a team, then that gives us additional clues in terms of what is affected. So like for instance, a patient may present with a digestive issue, but it actually isn't a digestive issue. It's more of an inability to let go, maybe a personal power issue, a trauma issue, etc. So you've got to get really comfortable with not knowing, right? Because we all want to know, right? So you have to get really comfortable with not knowing. You have to suspend your belief system and really be guided and led just as much as the patient. So, of course, you're going to learn different things as time goes on, and there's different structures and whatnot that we put in place, and there's therapeutic order, etc., because we want to go the least invasive to the most invasive. So we don't want to do the most invasive things, even on the natural side. And we definitely don't want to push them over to the conventional medical side unless they need that type of care for some sort of disease that we don't want it to run out of control. So again, there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of subtlety to this work that far exceeds any other practice. And so you really have to, again, have a strong constitution, know who the F you are, right? Quite frankly, because if you don't know who you are, you're going to be easily swayed and moved. What do I mean by that? Let's talk about anxiety. So patients will tend to have a lot of health anxiety. Hey, Anna, they'll have a lot of health anxiety. And so they will come to you with that health anxiety, almost wanting you to fix it, right? Make it, again, like a lot of motherless behavior. And so thank you for the roses. And so because of that, you have to be able to set those healthy boundaries with those patients and make sure that they know, thank you for the heart meme, make sure that they know, again, that they're cared for, but also too, that that's not your role, is to emotionally caretake them, or to mammy them, or to baby them, etc. And it can be kind of a slippery slope, because especially when people have a lot going on mentally and emotionally, they so desperately want to be cared for. I mean, I honestly believe that, if more children were held as children and loved and supported in that way, I think the world would probably be a much healthier place. But unfortunately, many people, children especially, are not. They're rejected, they're abandoned, they're mistreated, they're talked down to. All of these things happen. And that's when that subconscious mind is developing. So even when we work with parents, right, and work with the family dynamic, we have to keep mindful of that, because otherwise what will tend to happen is you as a parent will now project your trauma onto your children. I'm sure most people know what that looks like. And so we don't want to keep pushing it forward, pushing it forward, pushing it forward, because now it begins to build up. It begins to kind of take up a life of its own. But also, too, a lot of those mental and emotional woundings now impact the physical body and also impact different aspects of people's lives. And so that's where the practice of reparenting comes in. And we do a lot of reparenting in our practice of holistic medicine. And so, do you recommend nursing school at all as someone who wants to get a degree in integrative holistic health? Okay, so nursing is an allopathic practice. So you are going to be trained and indoctrinated into diagnose and manage model. Okay, so that is the practice of allopathic doctors or any kind of support. You are managing their symptoms. So to try to make a transition now, leaving that diagnose and manage model and transitioning to, let's say, a more health based model is really challenging. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but there's definitely a lot of deprogramming that has to happen on your end to be able to do this. I don't, forgive me for saying this, but I just don't like the fact that people, want to kind of, they like the practice of holistic medicine, and they want to be a part of it, but then they want to try to like adapt at conventional medicine to into a holistic mindset. Remember, holistic medicine is its own standalone thing. It doesn't really translate well when you're trying to mix it with a whole bunch of things, just simply because of the depth of understanding. You're the way that you're trained in, let's say, nursing is like a night and day comparatively to how you're going to be treating you know yeah, but so because I just want to get a degree because I do a lot of holistic things in my career already. Okay. So again, this is very much a depth of work and understanding. So this is not just, oh, I'm going to go do this on the side. That's really very cheapening the practice of holistic medicine, dare I say. And so just because you take some herbs or you meditate or you go to a yoga class doesn't mean that you understand the practice of holistic medicine. The practice of holistic medicine is very, very deep, very, very complex. The scientific structures we use are much more nuanced. How we do examinations are much more nuanced. How we assess people is much more nuanced. So again, not to assume that because you dabble in some natural things or some alternative medicine, it doesn't necessarily mean that now all of a sudden you're qualified to hang your shingle out to be a holistic provider. And I'm pretty firm on this. And the reason being is because this is a very specific practice. It's very complex, it's very deep, and it has to be coming from a calling. It has to be coming from, an ancestral line or a lineage, in my humble opinion, not necessarily something that you do as a job. If I did holistic medicine as a job, I would have quit a long time ago, because what we do in terms of practice and how we're treating patients, you literally are getting the brunt of the damage that conventional medicine has done. So you're getting the patients that have been gaslit, you're getting the patients that have been harmed, you're getting the patients that have not had a voice, you're getting patients that are scared, you're getting patients that are scared of doctors, you're getting patients that hate doctors. Like, you're getting so many different patients. And yes, yeah, exactly. So we don't want to cheapen this practice by saying, "Oh, I want to get this degree and then I'll throw that in." Like, so let me tell you a little bit about me, okay? So I'm Afro-Indigenous. I grew up doing this practice. I know Daphne did as well. So I grew up practicing holistic medicine, right? And when I was 8 years old when I was running around labs with my mom and going to organic chemistry classes, and then also doing like acupunctures and rebirthings and all these things, right? So I was, really, really young doing all of these things. Hey, roller girl, good to see you again. And so I got really through osmosis. There was a science that you could prove or disprove, but then there was this kind of faith based healing that you couldn't necessarily prove or disprove, but you knew that worked. And so part of my mission in the world is to bring these two worlds together in terms of the science component, along with the holistic aspect of it, to really bring about more personalized care that is specific to the individual. So this requires so much of yourself to deconstruct, to be able to heal and look at. So when you say, oh, I'm going to go get this degree, but then I'm going to sprinkle this in, that's not giving reverence. And so in spiritual practice, we learn about reverence and we learn about creating a sacred space. So we kind of started talking about that at the end of Intro to Holistic Medicine 1. So when we are creating a sacred space, right, of doing something, we're going to do it with intention, right? We're not just going to sprinkle it in, right? And again, what you're saying is that, okay, allopathic medicine is superior to holistic medicine. So for me, when I was little, I learned all about the different types of doctors, and I looked at the origins of all the doctors. Like I looked at Dr. Andrew Still, who did osteopathy. I looked at Benedict Lust, who did naturopathy. I looked at Rockefeller and what they did with allopathic medicine. And I looked at, D.D. Palmer with chiropractic, and I looked at all of these kind of founders and originators, and to see what I was aligning myself with. So when you're saying I'm going to be an allopathic provider, you're really not aligning yourself with holistic ideals. You're actually complicit to the system. And I'm not saying that to shame anybody, because we do what we do for capitalism and all of that, and also too, like with nurses, they definitely, many nurses, most nurses really care about what they're doing, but unfortunately when you get into the nursing field, you realize that it's not what you think it was. I've heard that from so many different nurses over the years. And so I really am about congruence all the way around. And what do I mean by congruence? So I can't say that I am walking in truth and I'm walking with my ancestors while also being complicit to a system that is harming my people. I'm very conflicted. In allopathic medicine, a Commonwealth Fund study in 2024 showed that Black people actually receive 52% subpar care worse in the South, right? Also, too, we are driving chronic disease rates as well. And why is that? Because we're in post-colonization. And so we are doing practices that are within the conventional medical model that are not in alignment with what we're doing. Yeah. So it's not, it's nursing, it's allopathic medicine is not in alignment with holistic medicine. It's actually literally the opposite of holistic medicine. And allopathic medicine was set to discredit as well as destroy holistic medicine, because if we start teaching people how to wake up and how to find the healer within themselves and how to transform and heal, they won't require conventional medicine. They won't require nursing at that point. They won't require all of that, simply because they'll be living healthier, longer lifestyles without the need for conventional intervention. And so when we are creating a sacred space of healing, we also set out with conscious intention. So what am I trying to create in the world? And is that in alignment with who I be? And so for me, integrity was really important. And for me, I just could not be complicit. Now, if people choose to be complicit, I understand. I get it. Capitalism is a part of it. But we want to make sure we have a focus. Yes. And so being an esthetician is great. That's a whole nother field. You're going more into, the spa realm, the medical spa realm, etc. And so we go from allopathy now to more kind of spa. I was a massage therapist for many years and worked in some pretty high end organic spas and things like that. So I'm well aware of that road as well. I'm just speaking on holistic medicine, and holistic medicine as its own respected profession. Part of what my mission is to create legitimacy around holistic medicine, because for so many years we've been discredited. We've been told, oh, this is, there's no efficacy to this, it's not proven, it's this and that. And we go back to colonization and how colonization was. And so in colonization and post-colonization, we were taken again from our original practices, and our original practices were shamed. We're told that they were wrong and they were bad, etc. And so again, right, and again, I'm pretty radical in this, so do what you will. But for me, it was every step that I've taken on this journey to be a holistic doctor. I was very intentional. It had to be congruent and it had to be in alignment with me. This is not something gimmicky, and I know a lot of times there is a lot of gimmicky things going on. I'm not a supplement salesperson. I'm not a chronic MLMer. I didn't bounce around from 5 different professions either. I was very focused on one profession and making sure that I knew everything there was to know about it. Again, because this is part of my purpose to really legitimize holistic medicine. So we have actual evidence that proves what we're doing is working, because they have subjugated us in many, many ways and continue to gaslight us and tell us, oh, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And we know that healing doesn't have to look a certain way. Healing doesn't have to be physical, number one, and healing doesn't have to, be, regulated or licensed or, seen as something that is, a certain way. And so I just, I caution people that are interested in this field not to get too distracted, because it's very easy to get distracted. There's lots of shiny things all over the place. And one of the things that has really stood the test of time for me in my career is being very focused and being very true to my mission, my purpose, and my intention, which way back when was really to legitimize holistic medicine and bring these two worlds of science and, testing and healthcare into this other world of, holistic modalities and holistic practices. So nothing against, if we want to try out different careers, but we also recognize that this particular career and this particular profession is something that literally is something that I wake up in the morning thinking about. I go to bed at night thinking about. I'm all throughout the day thinking about it. It's not something that I just put down to go run off and do something else. It is literally a way of life. And the reason that it has to be a way of life and a practice is because you are teaching people. You have to embody this work. If you are just teaching people and you're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, which I've seen, right? I've seen, holistic doctors or natural doctors, doing all kinds of unhealthy behaviors while then going in and teaching their patients all this health stuff. And so again, there's going to be an incongruence there, and that's going to show up for you in your practice, because it's all energy, right? So energy you can't lie to. You can lie to people, right? But you can't lie to energy. And so what happens is the energy will come out not as congruent, not as pure, and not as clear. And so when you have too many different, irons in the fire, too many ideas, different ideas of what to do, what not to do, etc., really that's just showing that you're not congruent within yourself, that you're not really solidified in your identity, or really solidified in what your mission is and what your purpose is. If you sit with yourself and you be with yourself and you are really intentional about what you're doing, it will show up for you. Like the next steps always show up, as long as you are in living in alignment and living in more of a holistic lifestyle. So you really want to embody that, right? Otherwise, it just becomes a racket. And like, there is nothing that grates my nerves more. Hey, Somali, grates my nerves more than a racket in our field. And what's a racket? It's when people are going online and they're like, oh, take this supplement or take this herb or take this, or they're making some crazy outlandish claim. Like I've seen, there's this new guy that's out. He makes these claims that autoimmunity is not real. That's one of them I've heard. Also, another claim that I've heard is that cancer cells don't replicate. And so these kind of statements are really, really dangerous because they're not true, right? But it's to, again, to kind of seem and appear like you're more enlightened than you really are. It's like, oh my God, these crazy claims. It's more for social media play than it is actually for true practice. People that have been in practice for a long time, such as myself, we can tell game. Like I can tell when people really understand this on a deep level. They understand therapeutic order. They understand Bachampa environmental theories. They have actually done the work in this field, and they've had the successes too. I had a gal telling me that she had healed herself and people with autism, like nonverbal people after a month, right? And while I believe in miracles, I do believe in, hey, Chaz, I do believe in miracles. I also get really, really concerned when people don't understand the depth of the work and they make false claims. That part really just, because again, it's anecdotal. What works maybe for you and your situation, again, may not work for the next person. And again, in holistic medicine, it's all about bioindividuality. And what is bioindividuality? It's you as a person are individual. So just because I've had success with a person that has had autism, or I've had a success with person with diabetes or hypertension or GERD or whatever, doesn't mean that every single case now that I see that has been diagnosed that same condition, I'm going to have success with. We also have to let go of our ego in holistic medicine, because we know not what we do, right? We really don't. We are just a conduit. We are a tool. We are a messenger. There have been times where I've been working with somebody and I get a message from spirit to go left instead of right, right? When my training would have me go left, but then spirit is telling me to go right. And so because I trust myself and I trust higher self and I trust spirit, I go right. And then, wow, I'm amazed at the result. But that doesn't mean that can now be replicated into the next patient. And so that's why we struggle a lot with scientific studies. Number one, scientific studies are very well funded by pharma most of the time. I think it's 85% of studies are funded by big pharma. So we're not going to get a lot of low frequency medicine studies out there. But furthermore, it's difficult to replicate because no two human beings are the same. You've got two human beings, even identical twins, because of how they perceive, because of, why they came in. There's all these different factors, as a, for instance, that's going to make that person, that life, an individual. And so we have to treat patients as individuals, not as, hey, Solo, not as, now all of a sudden this is a categorizing system. And now everybody with this condition is going to get this treatment, and everybody with that condition is going to get that treatment. And then furthermore, going on the internet and now professing that you have mastered, all of this. Because if indeed that were true, right, you would probably have a private beach somewhere, not be bothered, billionaire status, doing the thing, right? Let's be real. So the fact of the matter is that has to be some continuity to our work and to our care. And there also has to be some actual structures of healing and therapeutic order for us to gain some success. But that doesn't mean that that's going to be across the board. One of the beautiful things about holistic medicine, I think, is just the uniqueness of each individual and getting to know each individual and their needs and their thoughts and their desires and whatever's going on with them. And again, you can't have two patients with the same diagnosis. Let's look at diagnosis just as a foundation. Diagnosis is just an educated guess. It's a sophisticated labeling system. Diagnosis can be wrong. And so it's the function, it's how these organs are functioning, and everybody's function rate is going to be different because everybody's mindset's different, everybody's emotional responses is different, everybody's food is different. And so now most of the time people get overwhelmed because they're like, oh my gosh, all these variables, right? So you have to be comfortable within yourself to be able to manage all these variables and keep them organized for the patient. Instead, what happens is if you come into from a hustle healing perspective, oh, okay, good. All right, so we got this going on. Okay, here's this herb. Okay, here's this supplement. Okay, here's this, here's that. And it just becomes, again, very commercialized and very commodified, and it loses the reverence of the work. This is a very reverent practice. This isn't something, I didn't spend years going in and professing how, what I was doing with patients. I actually had my head to the books and my head to the ground, really studying and really focusing. When I went into my clinical training, I thought I was going to go into oncology and autoimmunity specifically because I had a real fascination with just how the body turns on itself and how the body attacks itself and all that stuff. And so my preceptor at the time, Faye Bass, who I love, 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 she unfortunately got breast cancer and passed away. Now, nobody knew she, had breast cancer. It was like mum's the word. But then she told a select number of people, and I was one of them. And it was really, really difficult. And so losing her really kind of taught me, wait a second, maybe I don't want to be in a profession where, I'm losing people all the time. And so I kind of switched into general family practice. And I love general family practice so much because you get a real smattering of everybody. You get to see, people with digestive issues, people with metabolic issues, people with neurological issues, people with aging, advanced aging, perinatal, prenatal, you get the full gamut, mental health, you get the gamut of people and what they have going on. And so it gets you out of that kind of very pigeonholed thinking. When we get into more of specializations and we get more into, one area of focus, you become a master at that one area. But in holistic medicine, you're really developing mastery on lots of different areas, not just one area. And so it's important to be mindful about that. So yay, cool. Well, let me know if you guys have any questions. Definitely drop them in the chat. Like I said, I wanted to pop on. I'll probably be on for another few more minutes. I need to eat some food before my patients for today. So I do still treat patients. I'm just very selective with who I take on. I treat patients virtually and holistically, so all over the world. I still treat patients in a family practice capacity. I started a health tech company where we do remote patient monitoring. So we use data to be able to educate you about your health from a public health perspective. So it's really to empower you to make different decisions with your health, because ultimately it's you that's going to be making these decisions and making these changes with your health, not necessarily just one aspect. And so I like that too, because it slows people down in that hustle healing culture where people are like, oh, let me grab that. Let me grab that. Let me grab this. Let me grab that. Because we've got to get people out of that frantic energy, which means you as a provider have to also be out of that frantic energy. Because if you're frantic and the patients are frantic, it's going to be just chaos. And so learning how to ground yourself, learning how to center yourself, learning how to re-regulate your nervous system so that you can have more mental, emotional, psychosocial, spiritual clarity is key, because otherwise you're just going to be healing from your own wounding and not be able to hold the space for the patient. And so it's really important for you to have done your own work in this space, so that you can serve, right? Because that's the point of this, is to serve people in the highest form of service that you can provide. It's deeply nuanced, so there's a lot of hidden things, and so that you'll be able to see and experience, etc., as you're going through the process and working with people. As my students kind of mature and they start working with me more in a clinical capacity, either down here in St. Lucia or through virtual means, they begin to learn kind of that gentle, soft touch that we have in holistic medicine. Because just one little, hey, Red, just one little shift over here and one little shift over here and one little shift over here can make such a huge difference. And it doesn't need to be these big, oh, now I need to do this and I need to do that and I need to do this and I need to do that, because that's not going to be congruent with the individual. We also first want to bring the individual back to self before we are feeding into, their reactive nature, because they're coming in already programmed from conventional medicine. So we're all programmed to react. We're not necessarily programmed to respond. So I'm going to grab my phone charger really quick, just for the last 15 minutes that we have. All right. Very cool. Let me plug this in really quick, because I just have this funny feeling that it's just going to like drop off. Okay, we're good now. All right. So I'll be on for another few minutes. Yeah, so as we are practicing, we're really more in alignment with ourselves, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, because we need to keep our vessels clear, which means you need to be doing the work, feeding yourself healthy things. And literally, it's a daily practice. So from the time I wake up to throughout the day to, before I go to bed, my practice of myself and my own healing is always number one. So I'm also always like, scanning and evaluating myself and just making sure that I'm in tip top shape, because I want to keep my vessel nice and clear and sustained for many, many, many years. So if you were frantically, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do that, that's just a sign your nervous system is not in alignment and not in congruence. And so we want to bring it all back to, that grounding and that focus, so that you can really, quiet down the mind, because that the chitty gritties, the mental modifications in the brain, the ego is always going to be chat, 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 chat. And instead, what we want to do is we want to start to connect back with our inner child, reparent our inner child, because that inner child obviously has been through a lot of trauma, and we want to raise up that inner child so that the adult you can be running the show. Because otherwise, hey, Darkwing, otherwise you'll be just running around, embroiled, doing all kinds of crazy business. I never realized, early on, like how much of my patients would actually trigger me, and like what they were coming in for was things either that I was working on currently or I had just finished processing. And when I started seeing this phenomenon, we understand about transference in psychology, but when I started understood about this phenomena, I really was like, oh, wait a second, like we have to be a clearing for what's about to come forth. And so I kind of already a lot of times know what kind of this next big, breakthrough is going to be societally, just because I'm like processing it through it. Even when I went through my Kundalini training, it was kind of interesting. Like whatever we were working on, like the next week, I would always get it like a week in advance. Like all the energy would stir up and all the breakdowns and the breakthroughs and whatever. And then, I'd show up and be like, okay, back to, back to focus. Cause I would be able to see it. And so, you've got to be able to, your vessel has to be able to withstand a lot of that. I've gone through a lot of like spiritual upgrades over the course of my life, and I never really understood those until I think, and I still don't really understand them, but whenever I've kind of had to upgrade different things within my system, whether it's my thinking, my emotional state, my nervous system, etc., it's like literally like God removes everybody, focus on me, focus on this, focus on whatever. And I've had to be obedient really by force. Moving here was very much like that too. I was kind of holding on, gripping for dear life. Same thing when I moved from California to Virginia. It was like I was gripping on for dear life. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And God was like, nope, you're next assignment, next assignment. So I've always kind of felt like my life was not my own, and that my life was to be of service. And I always knew I was going to be a doctor. There was never any sort of oh, maybe I'll do this. I really wanted to be a musician, I'll be honest with you, but I knew that I probably would have just, blew myself up or something. It would not have been good. And so, really living in your purpose and living in your alignment. This is a calling. It'll keep coming back to you again and again and again and again and again. Now, there is also usually healing that comes, whether you want to hear that or not, or you want to be held accountable to that or not. That's a whole nother thing. But at least you'll know that as you're transforming, sorry about that, as you're transforming and as you're healing, there is a purpose and there's a reason for it that ultimately is helping you to prepare for, the future. So, yay. All right, cool. So I just wanted to jump on and do a little chitty chat about holistic medicine and what it is and what we do and all of those things to understand. So let me make sure that I got that. So again, when we're dealing with, thank you, Bianca. So our minds, our bodies, our emotions, and even our environment is heavily connected. And so, it's not just about your physical body. So for instance, I had a patient come in many, many years ago who had a thyroid condition. And I've told this story many times before, and I've done her interview, should be on my YouTube channel, but she came in with a thyroid condition, pretty basic. She wanted to lose weight. She couldn't because of her thyroid, right? Well, as we started to peel back these layers, we realized she was in a very abusive relationship with her alcoholic husband. She was having to bail him out and all this stuff. They had 2 children. It was just mass chaos, 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 chaos. And she did not realize this connection between her not using her voice and her not being in her power to why her thyroid was out of alignment. And so we had to really work with her on her communication, on finding her voice and her personal power, again, helping her to connect with her higher self. So it's not about, me giving her the perfect diet or me, telling her to leave her husband or anything crazy. It was really about me guiding her to really find herself and find her truth and find her purpose and find her mission. And as we began to uncover, discover, uncover, and discard all of the things that weren't serving her, she ultimately made the decision to leave her husband, and she was able to, gain their home out of that, and was able to stabilize things, and was able to, lose a whole bunch of, she lost a whole bunch of weight, and, obviously because that burden wasn't holding on to her anymore. So it wasn't a thyroid condition. It was a lack of communication of self and others, and also connected deeply to that second chakra of that right to have. She just didn't feel worthy of love and worthy of acceptance and worthy of all of these things that she wanted in her life. And so that impacted her. Now, if I was a conventional doctor, or if I was an allopathic trained doctor, I would miss that, right? Or even if I was in that frantic energy, I'd be like, oh, here, take these herbs for your thyroid. Oh, here, take this, diet for this. Oh, do this for that. Instead of actually being able to walk alongside her through the actual causative, which was her environment. It was not, and her relationships in her environment. It wasn't a deficiency in herbals, or it wasn't, some, supplement that she needed to take or anything like that. there were so many different layers to that. And so there's a lot of versatility. Hey, Tata Kisses, thank you. There's a lot of versatility that you have to have. You can't go in with a fixed view of the way things are. You have to be able to really be very flexible and move to where you're being led and where you're being shown and where you're being guided, not necessarily where logically it always makes sense. So that can be challenging. And so people are always looking for that quick fix, even though we say we don't want it. People want that quick fix. And why do they want that quick fix? Because they want something to cover up how they're really feeling. They want to just put a Band-Aid on it, keep it moving, go back to their same unhealthy behaviors. Again, living in congruence, right? Out of congruence. And so, we've got to shift out of this quick fix culture and get more into, looking at, our intentionality behind what we're doing, even in relationships. I just recorded another podcast episode for my Confessions for Holistic Doctors. So look out for that. This week will be released. This episode is called The Magical Negro. So good luck. It talks about, the biracial dilemma and, how it impacts. And so, again, we've got to be able to look at ourselves in a very deep way. It's not just about, I'm going to go, I can't fix racism by producing, biracial children, right? And for some reason, there's this narrative out there that exists today that says that, if I, hey, Fit Mom CEO, if I, partner with somebody of the opposite race and I have a child with that person, then all of a sudden now they're going to be this quote unquote magical Negro. So definitely look out for that. But it talks a lot about, that kind of quick fix culture and not understanding the depth of what we're doing in our conscious decision making. Most people are unconscious with everything. They're unconscious with their relationships. They're unconscious with their food. They're unconscious with their habits. They're unconscious with so many different aspects of themselves. And so then they're literally just bumping around instead of really sitting and being intentional. When I was manifesting my husband, I was very intentional. Number one, I had just come out of a really bad breakup with a man that I loved. I was engaged to. We were going to get married, the whole thing. He was a beautiful, beautiful man. Lot of emotional challenges, but beautiful nonetheless. And so, for me, I had to deconstruct, around my heartbreak and around my grief with all of that. I had to kind of sift and sort through my own thoughts of that. And then I had to process, right? Intergenerational trauma. I mean, it was a lot of stuff that I had to do. And then it wasn't like an immediate thing either. So, I did all of that, like deep introspective work. I still kind of even left it kind of like, I don't know. And then, came out of those ceremonies and just journaled about the man that I wanted to be with and wanted to be upheld by and all of those things. And then I just put it aside. I didn't think about it, right? Because that is having certainty without logic. That's having faith. Is making your mind up consciously. This is what is in alignment for me. This is what you have for me because this is on my heart's desire. So having the courage to even allow yourself, especially with all the disappointment that happens, allowing yourself to actually have what you really want first and foremost. And then from there, right, being patient enough to sit with, the time that it may take. And you're not going in and check, hey, gallery, you're not going in and checking the water. Has it boiled yet? Has it boiled yet? Has it boiled yet? But you're actually living more in flow and living more in your life and living more in alignment. And again, just consciously making these choices, boom, boom, boom. And then bam, 2 years, literally almost 2 years to the day is when I met him. So again, I wouldn't have gotten that had I would have been looking, quick fix culture. I'm jumping on the dating apps. I'm going through a list. I'm doing the billions of sites and things like that. And so how does this translate to your health? We do the same thing with our health. I have a symptom, right? Where we don't look at what actions and what thoughts and what emotions or any of those things that actually created those decisions, but we just want to fix the problem. We want to, take an herb, take a vitamin, take a medication, do a surgery, do a procedure, really to mask and cover up and take the pain away. But ultimately, we know that that's not true healing. That's only temporary healing. An herb is only as good as, the rhythm and the spaces. And, I love low frequency work so much, which is homeopathy. I actually find it to be a lot more effective than herbal medicine, believe it or not, because in homeopathy, we treat based off of the psychology of the patient, the general symptoms of the patient, the peculiar symptoms of the patient. So we're actually treating, again, more in alignment with the human being, not necessarily a pathology. When you go down the world of herbal medicine, because they use herbal medicine as the basis of pharmaceuticals, it's very easy to click into that conventional medical model. It's very easy to click into we take this for this, and we take that for this, and we take that for that, rather than looking at what you're taking extra as a supporter to the work that you're doing. And we haven't gotten to the point yet where we're really ready to elevate without any external support. A lot of us we still need some sort of something external to ourselves to be able to justify our healing, because we have deep-seated unworthiness to be able to heal, and we don't think we're capable of healing, and all these crazy ideas, because we've been brainwashed a lot about the conventional medical models. And so when we leave that conventional medical model, we get out of the searching and the looking, right? Because there's always this need outside of ourselves, because that system was created in subjugation. That system was created to create dependency. In holistic medicine, it's not about creating more dependency upon anything external for ourselves, but rather it is being able to, listen, right, to our internal voice and hear what needs to be heard, process through whatever needs to be processed through, and then ultimately, make some new decisions that are going to guide you into the result that you want to gain with your health. So again, it's not just about grabbing something, right? And so that's part of that quick fix culture that we're also indoctrinated in. We all just want to, what do I want? What do I feel? What feels good? What sounds good? What looks good? All of those things. And we leave that in the world of holistic medicine. So that is very much a learning curve for people, especially in the beginning, intellectuals, when you want to figure things out and learn things, makes it difficult. Well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? But all of those answers are already within you. Everybody already has everything that they need to know in order to heal themselves. It's just about unlocking that and listening and hearing and understanding and comprehending and processing. And everybody's journey is unique, because we all have different paths. We've all come from so many different diverse backgrounds. And so we have to put all of our pieces, if you will, together. And so how do you start a healing journey? I'll kind of finish up with this, especially if you are overwhelmed by what I was thinking. So what I've been talking about. So I would say the first thing to do is really start to learn how to meditate, right? And so meditation, let's talk about what meditation is not. Meditation is not, I'm sitting silently and my mind is blank. That's not meditation. Or I'm sitting there and doing something and something's happening, right? Meditation is a way of being. It's a way of life. It's a practice. And so there's all different styles of meditation. There's active meditation, there's passive meditation. So in our morning flow class, we do a active meditation. We use Kundalini as the structure and the vehicle for that. But then in other instances, we may do passive meditations where we're just more so relaxing in to receive. Remember, meditation is when God speaks to us. Prayer is when we speak to God. And so we do kind of this asked and answered experience where we ask God, we ask the universe, we ask Creator, what do I need? What do I want? Right? So instead of reaching for a person, right, who's fallible and all the things, right, we instead ask our Creator, right, and we have certainty without logic, which is faith, that ensures that we understand truly what needs to happen with ourselves, and we have the courage and faith to be able to sit with ourselves and be with ourselves. And then we quiet down the mind if we can, right? It's okay if grocery lists go back, but we're going to take breath. We're going to take our breath in and out very gently and very slowly to be able to listen, right, to that small voice. So I don't know where everyone is, but we're going to do a little bit of a 5-minute meditation just as we kind of end out our class today, just to kind of help people to understand and get what it feels like. So we will do 2 different types of meditation. I'll do more of a passive one, and then I'll do more of an active one. So we'll start off with more of a passive meditation, which is more simple, what most people learn about, where you're kind of sitting and taking a breath. So I'll walk you guys through, again, just 3 minutes of guided meditation just to get yourself centered. So go ahead and find a comfortable position. Yay. Okay. Yep. Roller girl. I got your, I have your question, and I'll answer this after this. Okay. So we're going to find a comfortable position, right? We're going to take a deep breath, right? Wherever position we're in. Inhale. And then exhale. We're not going to control our breath. We're just going to allow our breath to come in and out gently, slowly, profoundly. So gentle inhale, nice and deep. And exhale. Very good. And inhale. And hold. And exhale. And inhale. Hold. And exhale. So now you can have your brain going in a million different directions, and that's okay. We're just going to observe them almost like they're clouds in the sky. We're not going to fix them, change them, make them anything different, right? We're going to be still and know that we are God, right? So be still and know that you are God. Keep breathing. Keep sitting. Keep being just present. What do you notice? What do you notice with your thoughts? What do you notice with your feelings? What do you notice with your body? What do you notice with the environment? All you're doing is tuning in to some gentle awareness. That's all. Instead of tuning out, we're going to tune in. So instead of checking out as a coping and a survival strategy, we're going to tune in and get back in your body. Get back in your body, right? So I give myself permission to be in my body, and it's okay. I give myself permission to be embodied, and it's okay. And I give myself permission to be grounded in my body, and it's okay. And we're going to hold that breath and keep holding that breath and keep holding that breath. And you're going to visualize, imagine, picture, and pretend with your logic, your voice, your reason, your very keen and specific decision making. You are going to reflect on being embodied and being grounded and what that actually means for you. Whatever comes up, it's totally perfect. Grab the first thing. Keep taking your breaths in and out, ever so gracefully, ever so easily, ever so gently. As different noises come inside and outside this room, it's going to make you feel more and more relaxed, more and more at ease, more and more at peace, more still, more calm. Coming back to self, being with self, loving self. I give myself permission to love myself, and it's okay. And I choose to love myself, and it's okay. As I take back all of my energy, all of my thoughts, feelings, ideas, and perceptions from anyone that has used or misused them for not so great means. I trade with them. I give them my forgiveness for my peace and my serenity. Hello, how are you? Welcome in. Very good. Big inhale. Hold that inhale. And exhale. Big inhale. Hold that inhale. And exhale, relax. So that's a more passive meditation. You notice how you get kind of more and more relaxed, more and more at ease, more and more, right? So now we're going to do more of an active meditation. So eyes open, wide awake, eyes open, wide awake, eyes open, wide awake. So now we're going to do more of an active meditation. So what do I mean by active? where we're actively present, right? So we're not in a meditative state per se, but we're actively present to what we're doing. So we're sitting up straight, right? And we are listening, we are talking, we are engaging with each other on this platform, and we're fully present, we're fully centered, we're fully in alignment with ourselves and others, right? So we recognize that in this time and space that we're in, right, is perfect just as it is. So any sort of feelings, thoughts, and ideas and perceptions that we have that are unprocessed, we allow them to be in this present moment, right here, right now, right? So whatever it is that you are doing physically, you can continue doing physically in this particular meditation. It's just about building that presence. So instead of checking out and going, oh, no, 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 I don't want to focus on this, we go right back. No, 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 right? So a lot of times, even with driving, right, a tendency when you're driving, especially if you know where you've driven a million times before, is to kind of check out, is to float out, is, and so again, we are in our bodies, we are human beings having a human experience. And so we want to get everything that this experience in this moment has to offer. We want to squeeze all of the goodness out of this moment. We just want to suck it all in, right? And as we do that, we allow ourselves to be fully embodied with our peace, with our dignity, with our respect, with our ease, with our grace, with our soothing, whatever it is that we need right now, we can give to ourselves. We don't need it from any external source, not even myself. We can generate. So anything that we want to create for ourselves in our lives, we can generate just in the moment. So if I want joy, if I want happiness, if I want $1 million, I'm going to generate that feeling in this moment. Oh my God, I just got $1 million. Oh my gosh, I just won. Oh my gosh, look at what happened, right? And that's where sometimes mirror work comes in, where you are actually looking at yourself in the mirror and you're generating from this space of abundance, prosperity, happiness, wherever it is that you want to create in your life. It's more active because you're not necessarily sitting around in this meditative state, kind of shanti, right? Instead, you are actively creating it, and you're getting excited and you're getting enthusiastic, and you're just generating more and more and more active energy. So not passive, where you're just kind of relaxing in and allowing that energy of God, creator, universe to come into you, but rather you are now self-generating, where your Kundalini energy is raising, elevating, going all the way up and up and up and up and up through all of your chakras. That Kundalini energy, boom, is going to go out through your crown. So far more active with this particular type of meditation. You can do it while you're walking, you can do it while you're driving, you do it while you're reading. You pretty much can do it anytime. All you're doing is building yourself back into your present reality, your present moment. So even when I'm driving, I go, what am I doing right now? I'm sitting, I've got my hands on the steering wheel. I'm, paying attention to this, paying attention to that. Why would I want to do this? So that I bring myself back to the present. The past is done. We can't change it. The future has not come yet, and it never really comes, to be honest with you. All we really have is this present moment. And so we want to have as much power in the presence as we can, because if we don't, if we're just checked out in the present moment, we're not going to manifest the life that we actually want. So there is a little bit of responsibility to getting back in your body and really kind of sorting and sifting and healing what needs to be healed within yourself to be able to then elevate your Kundalini energy even more. All right, so Roller Girl talks about leg, feet neuropathy, and foot tarsal tunnel syndrome. Okay, so B complex is super important for that. Also lowering inflammation, so that goes back to food, that goes back to what you're putting in your body, goes back to the liver as well. One of the things that I really loved about my physical practice was actually this foot detox machine, which is so interesting. And in the beginning, I was like, this is such a crock, this is not real, etc. But again, working with cancer patients in the beginning, I saw, because cancer patients in the beginning, when they're inactive chemo and stuff like that, you can't detox them. It's not safe because you'll detox out the chemo and whatever. And so we had to find really kind of creative ways to help get those drainage pathways going. And so one of those drainage pathways, we would use the foot detox. And so you can buy one like really cheaply online, like $100. And what was interesting is the cheaper ones were actually the ones that worked better. When I spent all this money on these more expensive ones, they never worked as the same. And so if you've never done a foot detox before, you can also go on Groupon and find one for like $20 or something. And what you do is you put your feet in warm water. There's an array that's in the water. The array releases positively charged ions through a process called osmosis. It connects with the negatively charged ions in your body, and then your body bioenergetically heals. So this is a very safe, gentle, yet effective way to reduce toxic load, especially bioenergetic frequency toxic load, which comes from, all the cable lines and the Wi-Fi's and all those sorts of things. Now, there's an electrical component to that neuropathy. So we're looking at your nervous system. So we want lots of water, half our body weight in ounces in water. We want to make sure our protein is to stabilize, right? And then when we're looking at the nervous system, we look at essential fatty acids. Like, I don't really like omegas as much as I'll do like an evening primrose, or I'll do a krill oil, but definitely getting those healthy fats to help with your cells and to help your body to detoxify from fats into liquid. So I would say those are some good places to start. Also, rosemary essential oil can bring in a lot of vasodilation. So if you take the blood away, like with a peppermint oil, and then kind of invigorate your vascular structures with that rosemary to warm things up. You can also use a cold laser. I would often use cold lasers for neuropathies. Really, really helped. But believe it or not, that foot detox was gold when it came to neuropathy. And really, if you purchase one online, like they're super cheap, like $100 or something, you can do it, 3 to 4 times a week at home. And it really takes a lot of the toxic load off of your limbs, and definitely helps with neuropathy. There's also some red light therapies that I've seen as well, like in using infrared light, and then moxibustion, which is part of acupuncture, where they put the needles in different areas and then burn a little bit with that red lamp. That can also help to detoxify regionally in those specific places. So I hope that helps you, Roller Girl, with your journey of self-healing. Resonate with whatever works best for you, and I'm sure I'll see you again, and we'll talk more about all of your health concerns. All right, guys, I think I'm going to jump off now. Yes, of course. It is 1:30, so I need to eat something, a little something before my patients start for the day. But I wanted to jump on and talk to you guys a little bit about holistic medicine. I know sometimes we kind of go into these like woo spaces, but there is very much a scientific structure with what we do. It's just there's also all this other stuff when we're dealing with energy, and we're dealing with things that are not part of the Western world. And so when we're dealing with energy, there's so many different components that we're dealing with. We're dealing with our internal energy. We're dealing with the environmental energy. We're dealing with the conscious energy. There's so many different components of energy. And so it's a matter of being in alignment and regulating your energy, and not spending your energy, not allowing your energy to leak, right? So if your energy is leaking in all these different places, you're not going to be able to contain your energy, and you're not going to be able to manifest like you want to. So we want to button everything up. Hey, Poetic. Hey, Marlon. You want to button everything up, keep it all in, right? Keep your energy in, keep your energy to yourself. Try not to let it go. Try to leave it, give it away, any of that. Try to hold on and contain your power and contain your energy, so that we can generate that Kundalini all the way up into our crown. And so we can create and manifest the world that we want, not the world that we mildly tolerate. So I'm done with my lives for today. I will be back on tomorrow morning, 6, 7 in that area. I'm afraid to even say 6 at this point, because, this morning was like such a shit-ish show, and yesterday I couldn't do it. So between 7 and 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be on live again with her morning flow. And then tomorrow evening, I'll be going live as well to, talk about something. Who knows what I'm going to talk about? Obviously something in the holistic health world, but nothing that I know particularly right now, because that's tomorrow. We're still in today. And right now, what's up for me is my food. So I'm going to focus on what I have to eat, my proteins first, my carbohydrates second, a little bit of fat. I'm actually going to have some oatmeal. So I'm going to have my breakfast, and then figure out what I'm going to do for my lunch. And so actually, you know what? I have some leftovers, so that'll be perfect. So do that, get some water, get some tea, get a little bit of coffee, so that I am motivated and ready to go for my patients this afternoon. And so then I'll just roll until this evening working and getting things back to people as they need to. So if you guys need anything from me, you know where to find me. Thank you all so much for attending this live. I love you all. I will see you soon. Bye, Tiki Talks. See you guys later. All right. And bye, IG. See you guys later. Oh, I had so many different great things on the TikTok. All right, cool. And hi, bye, all the rest of you. See you guys later.